And we are live. Hello, everyone. I'm Jessper Maquindang. And if you're here to build a stronger team and a more effective company culture, you're in the right place. In each episode, our guests share strategies, advice, and tips on helping you and your people thrive. And I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Blaine Little, an experienced corporate trainer who is passionate about transforming leaders and members of the team into high performing professionals. With over 2 decades of expertise in leadership development, team building, and communication, this certified national trainer delivers dynamic training sessions that leave participants inspired, informed, and equipped to make immediate impacts in their organizations. Having authored books like The Individual Team, How Fairness Wrecked the Workplace, and Avoiding Managerial Mistakes, Missteps, and Misunderstandings, he has served he has shared insights that resonate with professionals across several industries. These experiences give him the credibility to work with first time supervisors and C suite executives alike to navigate challenges with confidence. Let's welcome Blaine Little. Blaine, how are you?
Hey, Jessper, I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well as well. And I'm very excited to talk about today's conversation where we've connected human behavior to leadership and team building and clarity. And I was digging into the research a little bit and wanted to get your perspectives. And the first thing I found, this was from Gallup, and they discovered that 70% of an employee's engagement is directly connected to their manager's behavior. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that insight.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And what you're really describing there is the morale of the people within the workplace is that's the culture. And morale is really dictated by the top tier leaders, whether they create it or they allow it to occur. And so you can have a toxic workplace, or you can have a place where people love to wake up in the morning and go into work.
Excellent. That's an excellent insight. And another piece of insight that I found, and this was from SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resource Management, and they discovered that leadership communication is the number one skill gap in 70% of companies. Wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, you're right. And most managers have been actually asking for more training just all around. But yeah, I call communication is the foundation of leadership. And if you don't have good communication, you can have great ideas. You can have a wonderful vision, a sense of direction of where you want to take the business. But if you cannot communicate those ideas, then you've got nothing. And so communication really is the foundation of leadership. Everything else can build upon that. You have to have that set, and then you comes into place your things like your experience, skill, what degree you have. But you have to have that.
Excellent perspective. And one more bit of research that I found, and this was from the Journal of Business Research, and they discovered that teams that score high with an understanding of human behavior outperform others by up to 44%. Wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and it brings to mind. I'm speaking with a company or an association here in Tennessee of people who investigate potential elder abuse. And so it's the Adult Abuse Summit that I'm going to be speaking at. And one of the slides in my PowerPoint that I've developed for that is The Biggest Loser, the TV show. And if you remember the first few seasons, you had two coaches. There was Jillian, who was kind of like more of the drill sergeant, like, you have to go push yourself. You're not trying hard enough. And then you had Bob, who was sort of like, hey guys, come on, let's all come together and just do this. And you watch that throughout the season, and people are afraid of letting Bob down because they respect him so much that they want to please him. And so that's kind of the cult of personality that a leader has to have and kind of develop. It's not pushing your people forward, it's bringing them along.
Excellent, excellent. And let's take a deeper dive into the topic. So, I know you decode human behavior to build stronger teams and better leaders and more clarity. I was curious to learn more about your journey. What gave you the passion and inspiration to jump into this field?
Wow. Well, kind of a series of bad bosses, really, has kind of pushed me into it. And I'm a veteran, and when I was in the Army, I saw some good sergeants, and then I saw some sergeants who were just not very good at all. And I thought to myself, well, I could probably do better than this guy's doing. And so I got out of that, and I got a degree in business management. Um, and then I got into I've always been in something financial services, but I got into real estate, and my first boss there was just horrible. You would go in and ask a question of this individual, and the individual would just belittle you for not knowing what the answer was already. And I was a rookie, first year in real estate. And agents will talk amongst themselves, and come to find out, almost anybody that went into that person's office was just kind of belittled for not knowing what the answer was. 20 plus years later, I now have my broker's license. I realized that person just didn't know the answer themselves, and so was not the bearer of any information, but just kind of cut you down and ridicule. And that's really one of the things that led me to write. Well, my first book was avoiding managerial missteps, mistakes, and misunderstandings. Was I identify 8 different challenges that the typical manager has, and one of them is just poor communication.
Oh, good to know. And Blaine, thank you for your service. And as we take a deeper dive into this topic, why should people pay more attention to this idea of human behavior and how it connects to leadership and team building?
Well, and what you're calling human behavior, and I call it that as well, there's a new buzzword. Well, it's not that new, but instead of IQ, it's EQ, emotional quotient, or emotional intelligence. And that's simply how empathetic are you to your people. And I'm not talking about sympathy, I'm talking about empathy. Can you imagine what it is that they are going through, what they're feeling? And there's emotions and there's rationale. Your average person is probably more emotional than they are rational. I hate to say that. I'm kind of a left brain person myself, but it really is true, because we kind of take whatever the situation is ahead of us now, and we color that within our emotions or our feelings, and then we look at it rationally. So if we want to bring the team along, we're going to have to understand what they may be feeling, or understanding.
Blaine, on that note of emotional intelligence, I was curious, how has your study of emotional intelligence, EQ, how has that changed your perspective on traditional leadership approaches?
Well, it's always been there, and I forget the name of the guy who coined the term, probably about 20, 30 years ago. But emotional intelligence has always been there. It's just not really been codified. And there used to be the thought that in order to be a good leader, you had to have a good IQ, you had to have the intelligence. And again, that's secondary to how you relate with your people if you're wanting to build the team and help have them help you achieve your goals.
And Blaine, what behaviors typically define high performing teams, and how can leaders cultivate those types of behaviors?
Well, it kind of goes back to the Bob Harper analogy that I was talking about on The Biggest Loser between Jillian and Bob. And are people wanting to be a part of that leader's vision? That's huge. And you can get, I mean, if you just pay people to show up and work, that's fine. I mean, you can use them as a human resource. I don't like that term, but that's fine. But what you really want is you want advocates for what your vision is, and you have to be a good communicator, and again, an empathetic communicator at that, and someone who sets clear goals so people know why, where they're going, and why. Why is another big question that people have these days, and I love you probably read Begin with Why, the Simon Sinek book. It's a wonderful book. Anybody who's in leadership, I recommend that they read it. But the old "because I told you so" uh, mentality of management, that's last century. That's last millennium. That's done. That's over. If people aren't willing to just say, "Oh, okay," because the boss says so, those days are gone. People want to understand why. They don't necessarily have to understand all the little intricate details, but they do have to understand where are we going and why are we trying to get there, and how do I fit into that overall plan.
The why is such a crucial element in understanding where we're going. On that note, Blaine, I was curious to know, based on your perspective, what behaviors, characters, and traits separate good leaders or great leaders from good ones?
Yeah. Well, when you go to management school, business management, they're going to teach you that the four functions, sometimes they say five, the four functions of management is planning, organizing, directing, and controlling. Well, I say before you start learning any of that, you just have to understand how to not make your team mad at you. How to put them all on the same page as you. That's where you really have to start. And so, um, some of the things that I talk about, the eight managerial challenges that I discuss in my book, one is poor communication, and that's a huge one. But another one is also micromanagement. You're not going to move your people forward. You're not going to move the team forward by micromanaging people. And I call micromanagement training your people for failure. And what I mean is, if you are going to stand over someone's shoulder and make sure that they do everything a particular way that you want it done, um, they're just going to say, why should I even try? Why should I go board if he or she is going to come back behind me and change everything anyway? Now, of course, there are corporate policies and state regulations that we do have to follow. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about the everyday workflow. I was teaching a room full of managers last year, and we were just talking about this. At what point have you experienced some micromanagement? Because we've all been, Jesper, we've all been micromanaged by someone else at some point in life, and it's annoying for any of us who have been in that situation. And one guy, a regional manager, he had related that when he was in college, he had to sweep uh, the aisles of a store, and the manager came and he saw that he had, like, I don't know, his left hand over his right as he was operating the broom, and he said, "Oh no, you need to do it right hand over left to operate it, because then you're going to get more power if you're right-handed." Ridiculous, nuts. Who cares? As long as the job gets done, be satisfied with that, and let people do what they know to do. And if that means they make mistakes to learn, that's okay. Is it a $10 mistake? Is it a $10,000 mistake? Big difference. But let them make their mistakes. Let them kind of fall into their own routine.
Wow, micromanaging over a mop. That's
Wow.
wow. Uh, but on that note, I was curious to know, when it comes to management, leadership, team building, what are some red flags that people often miss, and how can we catch those?
Well, another big challenge that I talk about is that of liability. And if you're a manager, management means maintaining. So you set the standard. And if you're allowing for potential liabilities against the company, you're missing a huge part of your job. One thing that I talk about is the way things used to be back in the 80s and the 90s, and maybe even the turn of the century. That doesn't apply anymore. You know, you can have a work site where 20, 30 years ago, people might cuss up a storm and they would tell off-color jokes and everything. And people just kind of like, okay, well, that's just kind of normal behavior. It's not anymore. And I tell everybody, you know, if you have to use a four-letter word to make your point known, maybe it's something wrong with your communication style, but also you better avoid that F-bomb from ever dropping, especially considering what that word means. It's a sexual connotation, and that's just a rapid lawsuit just waiting to happen. So you got to clean things up. You also have to have a sharp eye out for, you know, safety concerns. But yeah, that's a huge thing, is just trying to avoid liability.
Excellent. Good to know. And Blaine, when it comes to messaging and communication, uh, how can we make our messages more sticky and memorable for everyone to really understand and get them on the same page?
Yeah, and it kind of goes to something that I actually talk about in my second book, The Individual Team: How to Instruct the Workplace. And in there, I talk about delivering reviews, annual reviews or evaluations. And a lot of people contend, well, there's no need for the annual review or evaluation because now the trend is to give feedback immediately and instantly. That's not happening. Okay, that may be the trend, but a lot of managers that doesn't occur. Um, so yeah, in terms of the you know, I do talk about sitting down with your people and just having a good conversation. And I think there needs to be some sort of an in-depth every quarter. And some people say, well, I don't have time for that. Well, I mean, you're going to be making, you know, cleaning up mistakes if you don't. You just have to have a good, clear vision of what it is that you're wanting, relate that to your people, and then check for understanding. And make sure that they understand what it is that they're supposed to do, and see if they need any help with that, if they need additional clarity or additional skills training. Um, Provide that for them so they can do their part of the team.
Excellent. Good to know. And Blaine, uh, based on your experience in your work decoding human behavior, what part of it continues to fascinate or surprise you?
Oh gosh, wow. It's sort of how things are always changing, but yet nothing is changing. Like I was just talking about, you know, there's these new trends and everything, but there's nothing new under the sun. Um, we've been around for at least 6,000 years, and we're pretty much the exact same creatures that we were 6,000 years ago of recorded history. And you just kind of have to look at your own leadership style as an individual, your own management style, and take a good hard look at you and do a real assessment of you know what your strengths and weaknesses are. And you lead with your strengths and you try to get some help for your weaknesses. We're always going to have some sort of a weakness, always, but try to lessen those as much as possible. I forgot what the question was, but I think that's a good response.
So that was good. It was to what fascinated and surprised you.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah. Just, you know, I mean, but you know, what we're doing is we're codifying things now. That's always been there. Like I say, EQ. It's always been there. Someone just put a label on it. And there's a psychiatrist who works with Tony Robbins, and her name is Chloe Madonis, and she's identified 6 human needs that people have, One of them is a sense of security, for instance, and another one is a sense of variety. Now, those two can many times be at, at odds with one another, but it just goes to the person's individual personality, which one they really lead with. But just understanding what the human needs are. And she didn't invent this, she just discovered it. And so that's kind of the neat thing is that some things we always took for granted and maybe didn't study quite as much. Now we're kind of labeling and actually studying and teaching this stuff in college now, which is wonderful.
Great perspective. And Blaine, when it comes to codifying human behavior, as leaders, what should we do or say when we see some unproductive behaviors in the workplace?
Well, wow. There's so many things that could be going on there in terms of the dynamic. If you have someone who is not really being a part of the team, why were they hired? Are they doing the job they were explained that they would be doing or not? What's their individual initiative? And Jesper, really over the past several years, the amount of initiative that people are taking has really lowered. Now they're more and more just waiting for someone to tell them what to do. And I really think that's because we've entered into the information age. Um, we used to call the 60s and the 70s the space age. No, we were just entering the information age. But um, everything is automated now. Everything's so automatic. I mean, if you want, I mean, I can talk on my phone. I just ask a question, and I have ChatGPT give me as long or as short of a response as I want. And so we've kind of gotten out of the sense of looking forward, like what's other than not just what's happening now, what's going to happen this afternoon, what's going to happen tomorrow. If I do something this afternoon or tomorrow, how does that affect the workload of me or others next week? And we've just kind of gotten out of that pattern of trying to look forward. And I think because of that, people aren't taking initiative because they don't know many times what to do. So they kind of have to be taught initiative, which is difficult for any manager.
Important perspective. And Blaine, I was curious. You brought up two of your books. What can we learn about them?
Well, you can go to my website for one, momentumseminars.com, and you can find either of them there. And I do have another one that's kind of a one off. It's for people who are leaders in organizations such as Toastmasters International, Kiwanis, Rotary Club. No one has ever written, in fact, I have a trade copy of it here. It's called Civic Duty. And no one has ever written a book on how to run a civic club. Can you believe that, Jesper? It blows my mind. I mean, there's manuals that individual organizations have, but no one's ever written a book on it. Well, here it is. But I have information on those three books, and soon, hopefully, I'll be releasing here in about a month and a half my third business book, which will be specifically on communication skills.
And Blaine, you mentioned eight managerial challenges in one of your books. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things was I call it the individual team, and there's this sense. The challenge is just not treating everyone the same, and there is the sense I get from a lot of managers who say, "Well, I'm very fair with my team because I treat everyone the same." Well, if you're treating everyone the same, you're treating one as you're treating another, and that really just hacks them off because they are individuals and they deserve to be led in a manner that is conducive for that individual. And that means that you have to understand what motivates each member of your team in order to bring them along. And a lot of people will say, "Well, Blaine, that's a lot of time invested in my team." I'm like, yeah, it is. You're the manager. This is what you do. But I started writing about the fallacy of trying to treat everybody the same. And I wrote a chapter of that in my first management book. And the chapter went on and on and on. And then that's when I actually said, lo and behold, I think I have a second book. And so I did write, and this book's actually thicker than the first one. It's just all about not treating people the same, but understanding what their individualities are. And sometimes people are not necessarily in the right position. They may be very good employees to get along with everyone else. They fit the company culture, but are they in the right position?
That's a great perspective, Blaine. And I had one more question. And when it comes to leadership and management, what areas should people pay more attention to in becoming more effective?
Really, it's ongoing training, and I mean all the myriad of things. I mean, this is a half-hour show, and we've already talked about a dozen different things, Jessper. So there's so many more things to learn. And there was a study that Forbes had commissioned, and I think it was carried out by Career Builder a few years ago. And they said that 58% of all brand new managers have received no managerial training whatsoever. Not just a little bit, but none. So a lot of times it's just someone who's a good technician. And they said, hey, you're really good at this job. Why don't you just manage everybody else and teach them how to do it? And a lot of times because of that, you get into micromanagement because this new manager sees, well, this is how I did it, so I want everyone to do it that way. And that doesn't necessarily work for them. So it really is just understanding the training, keeping up to date. Reading. Are you reading? The majority of people who leave high school and college never read another book. I mean, that blows my mind. I think it's like 2/3, about 70% or something like that. You may have heard that statistic. But yeah, you've got to keep on top of what's happening. You've got to be a reader. The old adage, a leader is a reader, and that's true. And you just kind of have to watch for new trends and get more training yourself for those areas where you feel the weakest.
Excellent perspective, Blaine. And as we wrap up, what is the best way for people to reach you should they want to learn more about you and the work you do?
Yeah. Well, I do a lot of corporate workshops, either all day or half a day or just an hour or two, whatever they're wanting. Management, leadership, team building, and better communication skills, even retreats. And like I say, just go to my website, momentumseminars.com, momentumseminars.com, and you can find out all about me. There's my contact information, how you can get the books, and a little bit more about me.
Excellent. And before we go, Blaine, what is your final piece of wisdom for our audience?
Oh gosh, if I had to boil it down to just one final thing, I would say growth. I'll boil it down to one word: growth. If you're a leader, you can never get to a position where I've been to college, I've got the degree, and I've done all that. I'm good. No, growth is what you've got to have, is continual growth, and that's huge. That'll keep you on top of what you need to, because the world is ever changing. We're discovering a lot, like I say, we're discovering a lot of things that we've never codified before, but then there are new trends as well.
Excellent. Blaine, excellent piece of wisdom. And thank you again for today's conversation. Really enjoyed what works for productive leadership behaviors, red flags we should look for, and ways to really communicate and get everyone on the same page. For everyone out there, thank you again for tuning in. We hope you picked up some excellent insights. If there's anyone else that could benefit from these ideas, please feel free to share this conversation. Last but not least, Blaine, thank you again for joining me today. Really enjoyed our conversation. And I'll see everyone in the next episode.